BuzzFeed News did some solid reporting on the upcoming propaganda war. Koch network to launch multi-million-dollar campaign to try to convince Americans to support the new tax plan. The network, which has already spent more than $20 million on the issue this year, will spend millions more next year on ads and grassroots events, as polling shows the plan to still be unpopular. Okay, so as of right now, only 33% of Americans support the plan. But the idea is that the Kochs are going to do a radio, TV, and internet blitz to try to change that. So already this year, Koch officials have hosted more than 100 events across 36 states about this new tax policy, and they knocked on more than 33,000 doors. And they reached nearly 2 million activists and spent $8 million on ad spending. So what's interesting about this is here you have mega-rich, far-right extremists who are basically doing old-school grassroots activism style campaign here. Like, that's what they're doing. They're using, like, left-wing grassroots organizing tactics in order to get people rallied around their agenda, which is wild when you think about it. I mean, when you talk about this tax bill, when you look a decade out, all the tax cuts for the middle class have a sunset provision on it. So after a decade, you have a tax increase on everybody in the country that makes $75,000 a year or less. That's the overwhelming majority of the country, because half the country makes $30,000 a year or less. So it's the tax cuts for the middle class are not permanent. The tax cuts for the corporations and the rich are permanent. So you have the Kochs doing propaganda to rally people around their agenda, which is just wild. But I think there's a bigger point in the story here, which is the uneven playing field. So what I mean by that is you have far-right, ultra-wealthy donors like the Kochs rallying people to push for the issues that they hold dear, even though those poor people are getting duped because this isn't helping regular people. But you don't have this kind of thing on the left. You don't have, like, the ideas of the left are already overwhelmingly popular. Medicare for all, 60%. Legalizing marijuana, 60%. Free college, 58%. Raising the minimum wage, 80%. You know, ending the wars, only 17% of Americans still want to be in Afghanistan. And that was as of 2013. I haven't seen a new poll on it, but I'd guess it's even lower now. So our ideas are already popular. But we don't have, certainly not to the same extent, this kind of grassroots activism and a propaganda push even after the bill's passed. Look at the dedication that takes. After the bill is passed, it has a 33% approval rating. They're like, no, we're going to fucking change this, and we're going to make it so that 53% of people like it by doing a fucking full court press, no holds barred, all systems go attempt to propagandize people into thinking this is good for them, and then this is how we win in the long run. Whereas our ideas on the left are already popular, but we don't have this kind of organization and this kind of grassroots pressure. And that's a goddamn shame. And again, what you have here is it's a top-down thing from the right. On the left, it would be bottom-up. But oftentimes, because it's bottom-up, it's harder to organize effectively and to really push your ideas out there. And, you know, that's really upsetting and depressing, because this is how you get debates around issues that really aren't debatable. Like, it's not a question, this tax plan is terrible for the middle class, going to blow a giant hole in the deficit, it's only great for the mega-rich, it lowers the corporate tax burden so much. I mean, corporations used to pay 33% of the federal tax burden. Now they pay less than 9% of it. And this is going to make it so corporations pay even less. And you're going to have to pick up the slack. So all these issues, I mean, these are things that overwhelmingly help the rich and corporations and the donor class. But there's a real grassroots push to try to portray these things as wonderful things. Whereas with left-wing ideas that are already popular, we don't have this kind of, massive fight. And one of the main reasons why is the number one entity in the country that's supposed to be pushing left-wing ideas isn't. And by that, I mean the Democratic Party. So, this is, the Kochs, they're huge Republican donors. This is what this is, Republican organizing from the grassroots. But for Democrats, the Democratic Party, it's not that all the Democrats in the Senate or all the Democrats in the House agree with Medicare for all. They don't. It's not that they all agree with free college. They don't. It's not that they all agree with a living wage. They don't. It's not that they all agree we should do more unionization and have card check. They don't. It's not that they all believe in a New Deal. They don't. It's not that they all believe we should end the wars. They certainly don't. So, since that's the case, the group in the country that's supposed to be the most forthcoming, pushing for left policies, they're not. And then there's this giant gap. You have organizing on the right and no organizing on the left, or certainly not to the same extent. And then in the battlefield of ideas and policies, the right ends up winning oftentimes, and it's because of this. We already have ideas that are innately popular, and we don't have the organization that pushes for it. And it's a goddamn shame, man. It really, really breaks my heart. I mean, why do you think so many millennials, voter turnout among millennials dips oftentimes in elections? Older people always, they view it as a civic duty. I have to go vote, even if I don't like the candidates, I got to go vote. Younger people say, give me something to vote for. And when all the Democrats do is fucking Russia, we covered the polls. People say, oh, God, Kyle, you have blinders on Russia. Actually, I think the opposite is true. I think the people who disagree with me have blinders on Russia because the polls show it. That's not motivating anybody to go vote for you. It's not. So when all you do is talk about Russia, and all you do is attack Trump because he's an idiot and he has fucking press conferences where he makes people suck him off, and he has, he sips from his water like he holds both sides like a toddler. When that's your main focus, you're not fucking gaining anybody. You're only preaching to people who already agree with you. So why not spread and make that tent bigger? They always talk about, we have a big tent party. Well, how about your big tent includes the fucking populist left whose ideas should be defining your party in the first place? But no, not open to them. Of course not. So this is a shame, and the right will win the propaganda war if the left doesn't get active on this front. And, for the left to win in this battle, they need to drop the corporatism, okay? We're never going to win by being on their terms. The Republican terms, they believe deeply in corporatism. Their whole movement is based on corporatism. So we're never going to win by beating them at that game because we're never going to be as corrupt as them. The Democrats can sell out 80%, but they're never going to sell out 100% as much as the Republicans are. So why would you stay in that dynamic where you're permanently going to lose? Change the dynamic completely. See, we totally reject corporatism. We're never going to win, nor should we. People on the authoritarian left are going to win in the social justice warrior battle because people don't want to have their speech controlled. They don't want to be shamed. They don't want to feel like bad people for odious opinions that they used to have. So you need to drop that. You need to drop the corporatism, and you need to have a people's movement, a workers' movement, based on programs that help everybody and that create a more just society and a rational society. You need to have Medicare for all and free college and a living wage and equal opportunity for people. And when you don't have organization at the grassroots level pushing for these things, well, then don't be surprised when you continue to lose elections, even though on paper you should win virtually every election in a landslide.